So we're going to be looking at division. We're going to be starting with looking at whole number division by a single digit. So this is the one that you should be the most familiar with. What I will say is before you start looking at division, because there will be a lot of it in this course, you do need to be really, really comfortable with your multiplication, your times tables, okay? Makes your life so much easier if you're comfortable with your times tables, okay? Right, so there are different methods. I'll be showing you kind of two different methods here, but first off, we're just going to do the formal method, which is this. I know that some of the primary schools call this like the bus stop method, so you might have heard it being called that before. But the formal method is the one that you should be getting more familiar with at this stage, okay? So I've set up our hundreds, tens and ones columns, just like what we did with multiplying and adding and subtracting. So what we're going to start off with here is we're going to ask ourselves how many sixes go into 7, okay? One lot of 6 goes into 7, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 6. Okay, so one lot of 6 goes into 7, but I have one left over, okay? And it's really important to remember what we're actually doing here. This one left over is 100, is 100 that we have left over, okay? So that 100, we're going to move it to the tens column, okay? And what this 1 now represents is 10 lots of 10, because you see how it's beside the 6, so this is actually now 16. So this 1 is representing 10 lots of 10, which is obviously 100. Okay, so we had 100 left over, so we pop it there. So now we have 16 lots of 10. Okay. So now we're asking ourselves, how many 6s go into 16? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Well, that's 6. This is 6. So 2 lots of 6s. Sorry. 2 whole lots of 6s go into 16. And we have 4 left over. Okay. This is 4 tens. So when I move it over here, I now have 42. 2 representing my ones column. The 4 is actually representing the tens column, okay, because it was 4 tens we had left over. Now we're asking ourselves how many 6s go into 42, or what is 42 divided by 6, which is 7. That's what I mean by it's really important to know your times tables. It's important to be able to think of the 6 times table and realize, well, 42 is in the 6 times table, because 6 times 7 is 42. So therefore, how many 6s, what would I have to times 6 by to get 42? It's 7. Okay, so it's really important to have that good understanding. So that's your basic formal method. You're asking yourself how many of this number goes into this, put it there, and then you're carrying your number forward. Okay, now the other method is I would say sometimes harder than the formal method, but it can help, so I will go over it. If we start with the number 762, you could be thinking of splitting this number up into nicer numbers. So for example, I could split this up into 600, okay? Because, well, why am I splitting up into 600? Well, I'm trying to divide it by 6, and I know that 600 divided by 6 is 100. That's a nice number, okay? So I've taken the 600 off of this, so I have 162 left over. So let's think of some other like nice numbers that might be in the 6 times table. Well, I know that 120 is in the 6 times table. So I could actually take 120 and divide that by 6. And I know that 20 lots of 6s go into 120. So I've split this up into 600 and 120. But obviously that only gives me 720. I've still got 42 left over. Okay, and I know that the 42 is in the 6 times table as well. That gives me 7. So if I add these all up together, it gives me, there must be 127 6s in 162. Okay. This method does require a good understanding of the 6 times table. So can be a little bit harder, but I think it's worth just mentioning that, this is a valid method as well. Right, so we're going to be moving on to the next question, which is 5,685 divided by 5. So we've got the thousands column this time, hundreds, tens, and ones. We're doing 5, 6, 8, 5. Okay, so we're asking ourselves, how many 5s go into 5? Well, one lot of 5 goes into 5. I do not need to carry anything. There's no remainders. Then how many 5s go into 6? Well, that's one lot of 5. And then I've got one left over. Okay, remember, this is 100. So when I put this here, just remember that this 8 actually stands for a 10. So this 1 actually stands for 100. So this number actually stands for 180. It's just worth knowing. You don't really need to know that when you're doing this method, but I think it's really important to understand what these numbers actually mean. So now we're asking ourselves, how many 5s go into 18? Well, 3 lots of 5 go into 18, okay, because we've got 5, 5, and 5. Obviously that equals 15, but then we've got our 3 left over, okay? So 3 lots of 5 go into 18, but we have our 3 left over. So that's 3 lots of 10 that we have left over. So when we put it into this column, this is actually 35, okay? Because the 3 is actually in the tens column. So then how many 5s go into 35? 7. Okay, again, that's just part of your times tables. You should know that 35 is in the 5 times table, and 5 times 7 is 35. So therefore, 35 divided by 5 is 7. So your answer is 1,137. Okay, on to the next one. Now, this one will be a bit new to you. Okay, this one says 159 divided by 7, and this is the important bit here. It says round to 2 decimal places. Now, we actually haven't explicitly looked at rounding yet, but you have done rounding in the past, so it still should be familiar to you. We will talk more about rounding very shortly, so we will kind of combine these two things. But what's different with this question, which you might have not done in the past, is that in the past, when you have done division sums that the number doesn't go in exactly to the number, you've always maybe just done remainder 5 or remainder 4 or whatever. But in the real world, we don't usually say remainders. Okay, so for example, if you and your friend were going out for coffee or whatever, or you were having a meal, and the meal was £25, and it was you and your friend were having a meal, so you were sharing it, so you were splitting the cost. The cost for each of you would be £12.50. Yeah, what we've done there is we've just taken 25 and divided by 2, which is split up into 2. But if I was to do 25 divided by 2, like in this method, the formal method, how many 2s go into 2? 1. How many 2s go into 5? 2. And then I would say remainder 1. Now, in the real world, you're not like, oh, the bill came to £25, we need to split it up into two. How much do I owe you? Oh, £12, remainder 1. We don't do that in the real world. We use decimals, okay? So we need to now have a method of using our formal method, but introducing decimals to our formal method, okay? And that's what we're going to be doing with this question. I'm actually just going to complete this one using the decimal method before we move on to the harder one. So how many 2's going to 2? 1. How many 2's going to 5? 2. Then what we usually do when we're doing the formal method is if we have any remainders, we just move it to the next row. So for example, if we just look at the first question that we did, which was this, how many 6 is going to 7? 1. Remainder 1, so we move the 1 over to the next place value. Now here, I have a remainder 1, okay, but I don't have the next column to put it in. But I could just create the next column, okay? Currently I have my 10s here, I've got my 1s here, but I could create the 10ths column, okay? Now how many, if I've got 25, if the cost of the meal came to £25, then it would just be 25.0 because there isn't any pence. So I could just add a 0.0 here, and then I have a remainder 1. I could just put the remainder 1 there. Then I ask myself, well, how many 2's go into 10? 5. So the cost would be £12 and 50 pence. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're just adding the next column on, which we can do because £25 is the same as £25.00. Okay, we can just add a 0.0 on at the end. Just remember, if you're adding a decimal point, your answer will also need a decimal point. Okay, so let's move on to the harder example. So we've got 159 divided by 7. So that's my hundreds column, my tens column, my ones column. So how many 7's go into 1? Well, none. So I still have my remainder 1 here. So how many 7's go into 15? Well, that's going to be 2 lots of 7. 2 lots of 7 is 14, so I still have that 1 that I haven't dealt with. So I'm going to move that over here. I have remainder 1. So then how many 7's go into 19? Well, 7 times 1 is 1. 7 times 1 is 1. 7 times 1 is 12. Well, what am I doing? Blah, blah. 7 times 1 is 7. Having a breakdown here. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. So not quite 3. So just 2 lots of 7 go into 19. So what is my remainder here? Okay, 7 times 2 is 14. So what's my remainder? Okay, my remainder is going to be 5. Okay, because if I had £19, I've dealt with 14 of them, so there's £5 left over. So I have remainder 5. Instead of doing this, I am going to add on a tenths column. So I'm going to put 0.0. I'm going to extend my bus stop along a little bit. I'm going to add a decimal point here, and I'm going to do remainder 5, but put it there. Okay. So then I'm asking myself, how many 7's go into 50? So good understanding and knowledge of your times tables is super important. 7 times 7 is 49. Okay, so 7 lots of 7 go into 50. As I said, it's 49, so there's 1 that we haven't dealt with yet. So I put my remainder there. How many 7's go into 10? Well, 1 lot of 7 goes into 10. Now, at this point, you might want to just stop because it says we'll round to 2 decimal places, and that's 2 decimal places. But it's actually really important when rounding that you always go to the place value to the right of the one that you've been actually asked to round to. Now we will spend more time on rounding later on, but this value here will determine whether this number rounds up or down. So I need to know what this number in here is. So I do need to do just another number here. Okay, so I'm adding a thousandth column here. Okay, so we're asking ourselves how many 7s go into 10. One lot of 7 goes into 10, remainder 3. So then how many 7s go into 30? That's 4 lots of 7, because 4 lots of 7 is 28. I do have a remainder 2, but I don't need to go on any further. Okay, I just needed to know what value this is. Okay. If we're rounding to 2 decimal places, okay, that's my second decimal place. The number to the right of that, if the number to the right of that is a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that does not round, that just remains a 1. If this is a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, this number will round up, okay? So my final answer is 22.71 rounded to 2 decimal places, okay? So this will be new to you, this way of doing things. It is quite difficult. So we'll do plenty of practice on that. And that is us for today.